Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Lipedema Channel here on YouTube and on IGTV. We are about to embark on an interview I've been hoping to have for almost a year now, because we like to not only tell patient stories, but also provide resources to the lipedema community. And the Lipedema Foundation has been in the forefront of this cause and championing research and the rights and offering hope to lipedema patients for years now. And we're honored to have with us the Chief Science Officer for the Lipedema Foundation, Guy Eakin. So nice to have you here, Guy.
Oh, it's just a joy to finally get a chance to be with you in the audience.
I know. And
Looking forward to it.
it's so cool because, many of the people that watch this channel are either newly diagnosed or they haven't even been diagnosed yet, and they need to know what a resource you are to them. So in a broad brush kind of way, what is the Lipedema Foundation all about?
Oh, gosh, so I should preface it by saying that let me give you a little bit of my background and how I came to be a part of the Lipedema Foundation. I've been with the organization for about a year. And so I can tell you sort of what I've come to appreciate about the organization. But prior to that, I was effectively the Chief Science Officer by a different title at the Arthritis Foundation, a very, very large organization. And prior to that, an organization that focused on neurodegenerative diseases. And one of the things that I've just become passionate about as I've met the people within the Lipedema Foundation and came on board is how much opportunity there is to move the research field forward, and how desperate we are to actually see that field move forward. For a disease that affects as many people as it does, it's really unconscionable that the progress that we have is at the state that it is at. And so our goal is to help provide a research roadmap that says, let's take on some of these big questions in lipedema and try to break them down in a way that applies the tools of research to make specific progress that's going to get us to a place where lipedema can be talked about, in terms of a research environment, in the same way that we talk about other household name conditions.
Yeah.
Cancer, any number of other conditions that just have a very, very, very rich research framework around them, or research community that are steering our conversation, or is it really backed up by the experiences that are there in the data?
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, because I remember seeing the video back in 2018, when the idea of the registry was announced at FDRS, and the audience erupted into applause because everybody knew this is what was needed to, as you said so well, instead of living on anecdotes, to then have real data. That's awesome.
And we need to apply that. I mean, even places where sometimes we believe we have data, when we look at it from the perspective of how researchers in another community might come in and look at the data that's available to the lipedema community, there are very good papers out there, but there are also papers that kind of lead us into more questions than answers. And so backtracking a little bit and going back and saying, okay, some of these ideas that are out there in the research community, let's go and let's make sure that, they're actually, that the grounding for those ideas is actually there. And so that's more on the cells and gels, laboratory research side. And then we have the other side, which is with the registry, which I think what we're hoping we're doing is going to take everything that comes out of the registry that sort of tells us where patients want us to go in research, the gaps that are there in the knowledge, the hypotheses that we need to test, and then we can apply those tools of the more formal laboratory research to actually drilling down on those questions and asking things like, how do you take on the concept of what diet is going to work in lipedema? We have some good data out there. We have some good suggestions about diets that are workable, but there's a lot more we can do. And so that's kind of overarching, my side of the shop. where the research is. Now we have Kathy on our call too, is a recently hired marketing and communications person who's the face and persona behind all of our social media now, and we're delighted to have her.
Our audience cannot see her. She is a disembodied voice if she would like to chime in about anything. But yeah, you can do all the research in the world, but if you're not telling the story, you're not connecting the dots to the people you're trying to help. Can I just say that if anybody's interest is piqued by what Guy's talking about here, please go to lipedema.org. That's where the registry lives. You can be a part of the registry, right? You just have to go to the website and you can submit an application.
Absolutely. And here's the amazing thing about the Lipedema Foundation, amongst many amazing things. We're not selling anything. You're not going to come on our site, and at least for the foreseeable future, you're not going to see requests for donations. What we want to be a partner in a person's journey with lipedema. And there are, from the day you first hear that word, actually for most people, from the years of trying to figure out what something is before you even hear the word lipedema, we want to be a resource, something that you find by Googling around. We want to provide information that is helpful to you. We want to understand what information you need so that we can provide that well. And then just be a resource, be a friend and be a partner along the way. We don't want to get overly complicated by trying to tell you that our ideas are right, or that you need to look only at our website. There's plenty of other wonderful.
I love that message. I love that message. We're all on the same team, in effect. We all are seeking to help the lipedema population. And I love that spirit of collaboration, which will help us get to the answers we're all looking for. In fact, the Lipedema Foundation began with the passion of a patient, didn't it?
That's right. That's right. So our founder developed lipedema after I believe it was her second job, and was inspired to help other people by the fact that her journey towards hearing that word lipedema for the first time was long and it was complicated, and she created the Lipedema Foundation, at least in its earliest form, since about 2013, although it fully incorporated as a formal foundation in 2015. She's also has sat as president for related groups, like I think many of the people on this call will be familiar with the Fat Disorders Research Society that our founder Felicity Daftar has been a part of, and the Lipedema Foundation continues to work with. Although I think we're all in a space within this pandemic, and trying to decide what's possible, where should we go from here. So I think we'll always have some room to go to figure out what collaborations are the right collaborations to do, but we're certainly excited to continue that work that's been done in the past. But the Lipedema Foundation incorporated, like I said, 2015, and started making its first research grants soon thereafter. And although right now I think our website will tell you that we've funded about 30 different projects to the tune of about $7 million in funding, which I'll say it, and it'll sound like a brag on the organization to say that we're the largest funder of research in lipedema in the world. And maybe that is a brag, but it's also a sad statement.
It's fact.
Yeah, it's fact, but the fact of the matter is we have really truly insufficient contributions of some of the really trusted research funding providers that we have in the world. In the US here, our National Institute of Health is the largest funder of research in the world. And we really want, and they're fantastic. I have to say, everybody I work with at the NIH is just absolutely a stellar person, but their portfolio doesn't reflect a condition that is present in our population. If we can argue about the epidemiology numbers, but we're talking about millions of women with lipedema.
Yes.
And so we want to see, we don't want to be the only people funding lipedema research, but we want to be funding the things that we think will move the needle. But at the same time, we want to be encouraging other groups to pick up on that funding. But we've at this point, what's out there in the public is about 30 projects that we've funded. And what's not, you heard it here first. We just awarded award notices, for an additional 16 other projects that went out in the last couple of weeks. And so that'll be taking us to more than 40 projects and a rather significant contribution to.
So one of the things we mentioned before we started recording is we love when people are pursuing and studying and researching, because it gives hope to the lipedema population for their future. And so the idea that 16 grants have been given in the last few weeks, can you give a broad brush of what some of the type of studies will be, or is that getting too granular? Should I have people go to the website?
I mean, listen, I'm so excited to see these going out. I could talk about it like I talk about my kids, right?
Oh, good. Then talk about it at least a little bit, because we want to get,
Yeah.
part of why we started this channel was to develop community. There are a lot of different community groups and social groups, but we want this to be the place people can go for inspiration and ideas. So
Absolutely.
Have at it. This is your big chance to brag about your children.
Yeah. So I'll say this. We need to take a step back and ask, like, if we just fund everywhere and every little thing that's interesting, we'll never get anywhere. And
Right.
so we're taking the attitude that we have to be honest that the lipedema research community, we're not in a position where we can really do the clinical trials that we might want to do. And let's ask the question of what do we need to create an environment in which clinical trials are possible and efficient and frequent. And so, what we need is we need a better diagnostic strategy for lipedema. We have far too few. I mean, our physicians are very, very, very talented, but there's very, very, very few of them. So developing instruments that help with the diagnosis of lipedema, or potentially even a blood test for lipedema, is part of one of those things that we need to bring to our environment to create a situation where clinical trials are possible. The other things we need is we need women with lipedema. And so having a better diagnosis will help with that. But that's actually part of what our registry does. If people are associated with our registry, and thank you for mentioning our website, I'll repeat it, it's lipedema.org. You can come in, you can register for the website. You can tell us a little bit about your story, but you can also, in doing so, agree to be contacted when other studies come up. And that's a way of actually contributing your journey to other people's. And then the last thing we need is we need something to test. And so we have some ideas about what might be going wrong in lipedema. Is it the fat tissue? Is it inflammation? Is it the lymphatics? And so if we can drill down and get ever more specific on what is going wrong, or even what's a signal of what's going wrong, even if it's not the first domino to fall, even the fourth or fifth domino can tell us something about lipedema. And if we can figure that out, then we can find out ways of monitoring lipedema, or levers that we can pull to affect lipedema in the future. So, okay, so that's the scientific strategy behind our program. So what we've come up with this year is we were really, I mean, just being honest with you, Brenda, we were really blown away by how good the proposals were that came in when we first started receiving them in what was February, right? And so, we had about 50 proposals, and we had to make some really tough decisions to get down to about half of them that we decided to go into greater detail on. And now we've come up with a group of proposals that, we have groups who are interested in a blood test, for lipedema. We have groups that are interested in, really tackling some of the questions that we hold up as being an absolutely known feature of lipedema. So the ideas of a resistance to diet and exercise being one. So we have groups who are saying, okay, let's not, we're not challenging that, but let's put some numbers on that. Let's ask the question of like how resistant, and and under what context are these things resistant to are these things lipedema resistant to diet and exercise. We have people looking at imaging strategies, trying to say if some of the work that's been performed, using different medical imaging strategies can be used in different contexts to help understand how lipedema is changing over time, or how it might respond to a particular therapy. There's 16 of these projects, but really, the things that they center around are those ideas of diagnosis, or going back and trying to find ideas for what are those levers that we might pull as a future therapy. We've got a couple of projects in there that actually are looking at therapies and trying to, it's not something that's going to go to the FDA tomorrow, but it's going to be things that are getting enough data to just actually say, is there that nucleus of data that's going to allow us to justify greater expense and larger clinical studies, amounting to a clinical trial in the future. So, trying to
tell you what, can I just tell you that not just the ones you chose to fund are exciting, but the fact that you had 50 to choose from and they were solid proposals, which means lipedema is on the radar screen as it should be, far more than it was even 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And we're also, we're trying to take ego out of this, right? So, I mean, even yesterday, I saw another organization out there that is offering money for obesity research, and I kind of like, oh gosh, I bet you we could bend this just a little bit and see if we could get some money for lipedema. And I sent it to a couple of our declined people to say, go look at this other organization. Maybe they can help you, and let's keep that conversation going. So, I mean, as you said earlier, but it is a community, and I mean, it's tragic that we have to decline some people, but resources are what they are. But our goal is to continue to help all of these projects succeed, and even the ones that of course, there's going to be a couple that seem a little bit off the wall and not really ready for prime time. But our goal is to continue to help working with these. Anybody who's raised their hand and says that they're interested in lipedema, we need to be with them to help sustain that interest and make them really productive members of our community. And I should say, I'm so excited. This also isn't a cast of the usual suspects that we're funding this year. We have some of the people who have been big names in the field that you're going to see being offered other awards. But I'm just so delighted that we have some people who have never worked on lipedema before, but are coming in and saying they found out about lipedema by one way or the other, and are looking for some help getting entry to the field. And I think what we're doing is we're getting to a place where there's enough interest in lipedema research that we're going to create a basis of that those very first discoveries that allow us to take the money that the Lipedema Foundation has been able to contribute to research and translate that into follow-on funding from some of the bigger name organizations. So the Howard Hughes, Institute, or NIH, these other organizations.
Wow.
I think we're setting up a really good platform, not just this new cohort, but also what's coming out of the work that's come before the Lipedema Foundation.
What do you have to say about the lipedema patients and their self-advocacy?
is that I would not want to tick off any one of them, right? So, yeah, it being the COVID pandemic, my uh, my worldview in terms of interactions with individual patients is fairly limited to the wonderful women that I work with at the foundation. We haven't been able to do too much of sort of stakeholder interviews, and certainly we haven't been able to do the face-to-face conferences. So I think we're all ecstatic about the FDRS meeting coming up next year as an opportunity for that. But um, following along in the conversations that happen on social media is absolutely something I'm doing every week. The conversations that we're having within our own team to really kind of conceptualize what can we do as our organization grows and improves to recast how we talk about the things that are on our website, which are really good information, but make sure that we're articulating it in a way that really matters to the people we support. It's amazing to me, like, if we post something on social media, some of the things that I think are just, amazingly interesting, kind of fizzle. And then, we'll have a post like when Jamie Soderberg released her blog, which talked about her travels and her experiences with the transportation, the TSA, the transportation security, and these scanners that they have. I
Blew
mean,
up, right?
it just, I
Yeah.
mean, it lit up like those scanners must light up. And so, we need to take that. Every moment's sort of a moment of humility when you go out and talk about what you think is interesting. So we're really enjoying and benefiting from the participation that people have with our organization, particularly through social media. I'll encourage anybody who is trying to capture our attention. Really the right way to do it is through social media right now. We maintain a pretty low staff. It helps us kind of stay focused on the things that are most important through the organization. So setting up meetings, emails tend to get delayed, but the social media is a good place to actually have pretty reasonable conversations that can also then benefit not just the two people having the conversation, but the other people around who are reading it.
One of the things that has really galvanized the lipedema population in the last year was the standard of care being issued. And I see it front and center on your website. It's front and center on our website. How important was that document to the lipedema community and the future of getting treatment and getting a diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can break that out in a lot of ways. We can break it out as a critique of the research community. And in the published research literature, we have a number of different diagnostic criteria at different regions of the world. And the US just has not had quite as formal a contribution to that. One of the things that's really a terrific benefit of that standard of care is that it was created by a consensus approach, which means that there was a structured way of, like Robert's Rules of Order almost, but the Delphi process of going in and having a group of mainly clinical teams come together and work collaboratively towards a very democratic agreement on what should go into a standard of care and a diagnosis. And so I think they did a really terrific job of that and articulating what should go into the diagnosis and what is the state of the art right now in clinical care of lipedema. Now, yeah, so here,
Uh-oh, what are
maybe
you about to say?
Here we go, right? So maybe we'll ruffle a few feathers, but I've had experience in Delphi process and other groups, and when we read that standard of care, there's an assessment of the level of data that is available that says that how secure are we, how good do we feel when we recommend any specific thing. And I would say that relative to my experiences in, rheumatology and arthritis, or, in some of these neurodegenerative conditions, I think in the standard of care, I think a legitimate critique is that we've oversold how confident we are in some of the data, that we've assigned it a higher level of confidence than maybe it potentially deserves. I think it's absolutely on track to telling us like what direction the data is going, but I think what we're left with is the idea that there's still room to grow, and there's still room to explore any of these facets of the standard of care a little bit more deeply, and derive some nuance from them. So I mean, what are scientists trained to do? They're trained to critique other scientists. So it's
Yeah,
done
and
with,
isn't that a good thing though? Like we know we haven't arrived. We
yeah, that's
know
right.
there's so much yet to learn. We know that there are researchers hungry to get those answers. So yeah, we definitely, and I say we, like I did not help to write the standard of care, but I have been watching and observing and hearing the stories told. And I think there was a certain momentum and excitement around that because it was a landmark in the
Absolutely,
community.
absolutely.
Absolutely. And knowing that there's more to go and more to learn. But thankfully, people like you were on the case.
Well, I wasn't a part of it, so that's why I could step back a little bit. And I think it is a great moment in time. And I'll tell you where I think it will be particularly helpful is it's not my area of expertise. I shouldn't comment too much about it, but insurance reimbursement for treatment of lipedema is terrifically complicated. And I think that what the standard care did is every internal policy that every insurance payer has right now that says, this or that is effective. It's a shot across the bow to say that every one of those policies is absolutely invalidated. The standard of care has been published, and those organizations need to go back and update those policies to be reflective of what actual lipedema experts believe, is a appropriate treatment for lipedema. And so I think it's I think it's a terrific, absolutely important milestone in that. And I also think that we can't take that standard of care and say, okay, that's a mission accomplished, let's put it in a drawer. I think we'll be coming back to that in another few years, and it doesn't have to be me involved. I'm not lobbying for that position, because but for a healthy research community, we got to keep coming back, because I mean, look, lipedema, there's about 400 academic papers that talk about lipedema, since 1941. 40 of them were published last year, and I looked at it the other day and I've forgotten the number, but it looks like we're on track to do about the same, this year, if not more. And if we were rewinding 5 years ago, it was maybe like, we're kind of getting 10, 12 publications a year coming out. So the trajectory is that this field is going to change, and it's going to accelerate, and we're going to have a lot of new learnings. And so a healthy community just has to come back every so often and take a look at what it is that we feel that we understand, and ask whether new data would change that. And so I again, my hat's off to the people who have participated in the establishment of the standard of care. And I think it's the role of the rest of the community to say, don't rest on your laurels. Let's
Keep going.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
keep going. I agree. I absolutely agree. So you've already been so generous with your time. I can see that the Lipedema Foundation made such a wise choice in their choice of a chief medical officer and chief science officer. I like your use of the words humility and taking ego out of it, and we're all in this together. I think those are words that aren't said lightly. They come from the heart. So I truly appreciate that. So let's take out your crystal ball.
Okay.
Let's look in a crystal ball. And if you could predict the future and it went your way, What would you like to see in 5 years that you could say the Lipedema Foundation has accomplished?
Yeah. Um, our registry, uh, our registry has been built, but it hasn't turned on to just really help drive a research roadmap for the organization. So for the organization and the field. And so I think translating the work of, and it's not just our work, it's the work of all the women who have participated. And this registry takes some time to actually sit down and contribute your data to. And so when we think about all the generosity that's gone into that, turning that into meaningful research impact in a way that not only contributes to the data we have into the field, but where the field is going, is what I want to see the Lipedema Foundation really putting as a priority. The other part of it is getting taking that data and really, I use the word research roadmap, and we want to put together a research roadmap that says, knowing what we know now about lipedema, what's the low-hanging fruit, what's that critical path that we can pluck the low-hanging fruit that's easy, but what's that critical path that's going to get us to a place where a woman's journey to the diagnosis of lipedema is short and efficient, and there are therapeutic options for her beyond what we know today. Getting that research roadmap in place is something that I'm really interested in. We also, one of those kind of the three legs of the stool of what we need to have an environment in which we have clinical trials that are frequent and efficient is people participating in trials. So we either need a more efficient way of sharing, when clinical studies are becoming available and those opportunities that are out there. We need a group of, a patient population that is eager and have their ears open to when those occur. And we also need to develop alternative strategies that, when we don't have enough women in a particular study of lipedema, what are the other ways that we can provide researchers with? Maybe it's biopsy material, maybe it's models of lipedema that happen entirely in a petri dish, that we don't actually need a woman in order to be able to a woman with lipedema in order to be able to do a study on lipedema. So, I mean, those are kind of three of the things that I'd like to see happening in the next 5 years to have some significant progress on. And there's others, but also I want to get this pandemic behind us, and I want to start, getting out there and
Amen. Amen. Well, my hope,
yeah.
I have a dream, Lympha Press, we do monthly lipedema patient roundtables every month, and we usually have a great involvement online. My dream at FDRS in 2022 is to do a live roundtable with a live audience, and I can get my Oprah on and make this thing happen. So may your words be true. May this pandemic be behind us.
Absolutely. And so I have not been able to be on one of your roundtables in the audience there to listen to that, but I'm going to do that. So
Please do.
Next month, count me in.
You have an open invitation, and I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to encourage everyone who's listened to this interview, please go visit lipedema.org. There's so much information there. You can participate and be a part of the solution and the research and the future. I hope that in 5 years we can say, done, 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 all the things on the wish list. Is there something that you can offer patients to equip them and prepare them to talk to a doctor that really isn't aware of lipedema?
Yeah, I mean, we hear that all the time. It's what prompted us to write a section on our website about finding a lipedema specialist, and it goes through a number of different professions. And, it kind of is organized in a way of the groups that you might go to first and might not get the response that you want. Maybe they know about lipedema, maybe they don't. Down to groups like vascular surgery that actually make lipedema part of their official training programs. And so there's a few ideas in there about, how to take brochures and how to begin a conversation with your doctor to ask if they're, competent making referrals, are confident making referrals for you. Um, are they willing to learn a little bit about lipedema before making making an assessment that might be contrary to what they have right in front of them? There's some other ideas in there. One of the things that we really love is the certified lymphatic therapist designation that many physical therapists have. And by going into, and we link off this off of the website, so you can find the URL there. You can find the physical therapists who actually know what lipedema is and have expertise in lymphatics, and then backtrack from there. Ask them, who are the doctors that are referring to you, and use that to find people in your region who are actually seeing the lipedema patients and providing them with care. So that's on our website. That's lipedema.org, and it's just lipedema.org/finding specialists.
Any final words for the viewers out there, Guy?
Oh, I mean, where I was headed is it really is going to take a community of people who are all passionate and are all invested. And to the patients in the community, I want to make sure you're not thinking of yourself and your relationship to research as just being a guinea pig, that you have a role in actually steering the conversation of where research is heading. Even getting, if we announce an award coming up here in the next couple of weeks and you see that it's in your area, let's have a conversation about, is there a way for you to be involved and not just being in the study, but helping to steer that study. So I'm just overjoyed to be a part of the conversation today. Really, thank you for reaching out and inviting us in. I mean, we all kind of get down in our work and
Right.
don't necessarily look up. So it's just great to be here, and I really appreciate the time.
It was absolutely a delight. The time flew by. I thank you so much for your time, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Lipedema Channel, sponsored by Lympha Press. Tune in for inspiring interviews and information to help you in your lipedema journey. I'm Brenda Viola. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great day.